Today we're working on a very, very special car. I'm a BMW guy, but I think all BMW guys are secretly Porsche guys at heart. So come take a look at this super cool car that we're working on today. It's not a Volvo, it's the Porsche GT4RS. So if you know anything about these kind of cars, this is the premium model. It's very beautiful. And we're gonna make it even more beautiful today with a color change paint protection film. This is UPPF Black Phantom Red. So it changes the color of the car, not at all dissimilar to a vinyl wrap, but the main difference is you're getting the protection of PPF, the glossiness of PPF, and it's just a really cool, unique finish. So for a car as nice as this, it's worth it to upgrade a little bit. The main downside, if there is one to this product, is it's so much more expensive than a vinyl wrap. It's pretty much double the price. However, it's warranted for twice as long. So if this is your dream car, you've always wanted this vehicle and you just want to change the color of it at the same time, this is the way to go, in my opinion. So let's take a look at it and see what's different between this and a vinyl wrap. So this product, just like a clear PPF, you install it with soapy water. So this isn't one of those dry apply PPFs that you may have been hearing about. This goes on just like regular clear bra, except you are gonna wanna change your slip mixture a little bit. At first, we tried to use our regular soapy mixture with this and it just would not stick. So we actually had to chop it in half. Whatever you normally do for your clear PPF, that amount of soap is going to be way too much for this particular product. I don't know if that's necessarily true with all color change PPF, the S-Tech product. We kept our mix pretty much the same for that and it went down fine, but this particular brand, it wants way less soap. And then to wash out the edges, we are just using distilled water, so no alcohol or anything like that. But the main difference you're gonna see on this product compared to a vinyl wrap is just look how much glossier this thing looks. It's wet. It looks amazing. And being twice as thick, this thing's gonna take way bigger of a beating than your vinyl wrap would. So the little peppery rock chips you might get on the front bumper that might tatter your vinyl wrap, this is probably, they're just gonna glance off of this film. So at the end of the day, this is a premium product, but man, it does look premium. If it were my car, I think I'd spend the extra money for it. So now, we wrapped this panel yesterday. I like to just let these edges dry a little bit. With these soapy water applications, if you just try and roll all the edges right after you install it, they're gonna pop back up. I think it's kind of a waste of time, honestly. So we come back the next day, all the soap, really, the moisture has dried out on these edges here. And then we just take a heat gun, give it just a little tap of heat, and there they go. They just roll right around, easy peasy. Look at that. Nice and easy there. You try and do this while it's still wet, it's not going anywhere. So with these projects, we do use our templating software that we use for the clear, but we make extensions. So on this particular project, we just blew out every single panel, 1/2 inch all the way around. So we're not wasting film. The thing that sucks about this particular brand and most color change PPF is the roll is only 50 feet long. So compared to vinyl wrap with a 75-foot roll, the 75 feet usually gives you some room for error if you want to redo a panel, or maybe if it's just a bigger vehicle. But with these 50-foot rolls, you got to be super careful. By the time we're finished cutting out this car, we had maybe like 3 extra feet of film, so 0 room for errors. This film too, most color change PPF, you're talking like over $2,000 for a roll of film. So you definitely don't want to have to buy more film. With that being said, if you're smart and you use the plotter, it can save you. You can butt up all these pieces right next to each other and maximize your film usage. So we give that, bulk method installation where you're hand cutting all the corners and really fine tuning everything, not using the templates, but the templates help us save on material. So when people ask that question, bulk versus kits, which one is better, I like to kind of use the best of both worlds. So before we do a panel, we call it like mopping it, if you will. So we use our same slip mixture that we put on. We just put it on the panel and we're just squeegeeing off the water. So what we're trying to do with this is like any little piece of lint or hair or speck of dust, we're gonna remove that right before we put the piece of film down. That's the goal of this, at least. And you know, sometimes a little speck of dust is unavoidable, but we're gonna do every single thing we can to mitigate that, because with PPF or any real wrap product in general, once you see that little speck of dust or hair underneath the wrap, you can never unsee it. And our customers pay a good amount of money, so we don't wanna miss anything or leave any debris underneath the wrap there. On a project like this too, typically we would want to remove these vents, but on this particular hood, these are not accessible. So just want to let you guys know, we're not cutting corners here. If we could remove this vent easily, I would highly recommend doing that so you can get the film all the way in here, but it's not really an option on this particular car. So we'll leave it as is. For the slip mixture as well, just want to remind you guys, do not change. Do not think that you can use your regular slip mixture on this color change PPF. You need to mix it up. So maybe take a small test piece and play around with your ratios. For us, we're using half the soap we typically do for this particular UPPF. So like I was saying before, instead of just doing a bulk hood here, we're gonna wanna take our film and pre-cut it. So it's a template, but we extended all the edges, so it's much bigger than it needs to be here. Let's take a rag too and just do one final dusting on the hood piece so we don't transfer any kind of dust or debris. So instead of just taking one big piece for the hood, we managed to put the mirrors in here, you know, little trim pieces alongside of the hood. If you had bulked this, you'd probably be throwing away a lot of extra film. You got the soap ready?
Yep. Grazie.
I'll switch with you. It does have a good smell to it. So I like to just put a little extra soap on top of the film, just to kind of let your tools glide on it. So at this point, we just kind of want to make sure we have our half-inch roll all the way around. We're not short anywhere. And then any kind of wrinkles like this, you know, we can just work them out by hand before we really squeegee anything down. And there's enough soap in here that we're not really sticking it down with our hands just yet. But we're just kind of getting into position here. And then once we know we're ready, I typically like to just tack it down on the corners here. Just give it a little bit of an anchor. So once I'm moving around the car, I'm not gonna come up short anywhere. And when you're working with another helper here, I think it's nice to do exactly what Ken just did. Just split the hood in half. So if I have something for whatever reason I need to lift up my side, I'm not messing up his side. He's kind of locked in, and then now I have my side and he has his side. We can work independently. And it also makes sure the hood goes down fast, because with the wet application method, you don't want to be taking your time and taking too long, because that water is going to dry. And once it dries, you're going to get lift marks, you're going to get blemishes. You just kind of want it to go down nice and quick, fast enough where you don't get any bubbles, but quick enough where, it doesn't start to dry out on you there. So you can see we got a little wrinkle here, but that's no issue. We just give it a little stretch and it goes away. Easy peasy. Some people think that PPF is a lot harder than vinyl wrap. In my opinion, it's not. I think PPF is a lot easier than vinyl wrap once you get the hang of it. But, for whatever reason, PPF warrants a much higher price tag than vinyl wrap. I don't know why it became that way, but it is what it is. And once we get into position here and we're really happy with it, what I like to do is come in with a dry towel and just kind of wipe off the water here. And the reason I'm doing this is to look for bubbles, because when the car is covered in soapy water, sometimes you miss a bubble or two. But now we haven't locked in any of these edges yet. This is the perfect time to go back and look for any mistakes, because even at this stage, we could just rip the whole thing up again, start from scratch, and be fine. Not to worry. So take advantage of that. It's looking really good here.
Nice and clean, no bubbles.
No bubbles, no debris, no hairs or anything in it. So we're nice and confident that we can start actually laying this thing down. So for our tack mixture, I just like distilled water. Some people will put alcohol in their tack mix. I used to do that, and then I switched to distilled water, and it works just fine. So, why introduce other stuff? Not to mention, if you use too much alcohol in your mix sometimes, you can burn that film. May not be visible here with the color change PPF, but with clear film, you'll haze it right up. And PPF's pretty expensive. We don't want to be doing that if we can avoid it there. So you can see I'm struggling with this area a little bit. I just keep squeegeeing and these lines just keep coming back up. So that's what we're going to use our tack mix for, I could sit here all day trying to squeegee this, but they're going to keep coming back. So we're going to put some distilled water in there, and you're going to see they just lock right in. So you see, once that water gets in there, it just flushes out all the soapy mix. So that's really what the distilled water is doing. You're not necessarily just, the water doesn't make the film stick. It's just getting rid of the soap. It's flushing the soap away. So you see, I still have a couple near where that vent is, but overall, I squeegee it and they're not coming back. That's what the distilled water is doing. It's just getting rid of that soapy water and letting the film naturally stick. We got a small little bubble here. That's still good enough, we can come back for it. But we're getting to the point now where it's quite sticky. We really don't want to be lifting it too much more at this point. And if you have a really tiny, tiny little bubble, it's probably not worth going back for. The water is going to naturally want to evaporate. So little tiny bubbles, sometimes it's better we just leave them, let them dry on their own, instead of playing with it, messing with it, lifting up the film to go back for it, because at this point when it's getting dry, it could leave more of a blemish picking up the wrap. You'll have a big line where you picked up the wrap from, instead of just letting it dry naturally. So at this point, I can see my teammate here. He's already put down his wrap. Everything's looking good. Now I can make a cut. I wouldn't want to just make a cut while he still has half the hood done, because let's say he finds a blemish or something. Now he has to readjust his film, and there's a big hole. It's going to make it harder to readjust. So once that's done, I'm going to very carefully make a cut here, you know, really being careful not to cut the hood underneath here. Ultra careful. But the reason I'm doing this now is now I'm making a hole so I can spray the water in here and just get all that soap out. And then you can see there's this little channel right here. The water keeps sneaking down it. The hood is pointing down, so the gravity is naturally going to pull the water down with it. So to prevent that, I can just kind of keep my hand there in the meantime, just to kind of lock it in place here until I introduce the water. Get the water all up in there, and I'm just being conscious I'm not going to make a huge puddle in here, right? So enough water to lock it in, but not so much where I'm going to make more problems for myself. You can see it's starting to take shape of that curve right now, but all the while I'm chasing out those little bubbles. We don't want them to dry in there. It can be easy to lose some bubbles when the whole thing's wet like this, so you want to use your hand and feel for those bubbles. Looks like we're getting a phone call. Now we've pretty much got it down. This vent could be stubborn, could give us a little bit more trouble, but we're at a point where we could just let that dry by itself. You know, if he's struggling with the soap, it just doesn't want to stick, we could just let it sit for a little while and come back to it. That's kind of what you need to do with PPF sometimes. Maybe start the next panel, give it an hour or two to dry out, come back, and then that edge might just sit right down. But before we walk away, you know, we just want to make sure there's no big bubbles that we can't fix later. And this would be a good time too to just seal the edges here, so you can see these here. And they seem to be going down, but you know, if they're stubborn like this, they want to come back. That's when you need to introduce your soap, or not your soap, your tack. So we're trying to get out the soap. There you see. Just a little bit of water. Get rid of that soap, and it sticks right down. This electric sprayer is very handy. Don't need to pump it.
What are you trying to say?
I'm quite fond of it, you know. If Mr. Mike wants to sponsor us, you know, he knows where to find us. He can send us another one. Okay. So overall, this looks pretty good. I don't think it's wise to just sit here and try and get all the edges wrapped at this point. I think it's down enough. We can start doing the next piece. Let's say we do the roof, the spoiler. Those are really the only pieces left on this car. Sitting here for another hour trying to force all these edges down, it's going to be a waste of time. If we come back in a couple hours, everything will be dry. You saw earlier with the heat gun, we just give it a little tap of heat, it rolls right around, and we're good to go. So for the disassembly on this car, you know, with PPF, they do make templates that go around the mirror. It puts like a little seam up here. And same with the door handle. You know, if you just weren't confident taking these apart, you could use the template. But, you know, we're doing vinyl wrap. We know how to take this shit apart. So why aren't we gonna do it? It saves you from putting an ugly seam in there. It just looks seamless, because at the end of the day, we want to make it look like paint. The best compliment a wrapper can get is when they can't even tell that there's a wrap on the car. So I think doing the small disassembly here, it's worth it. You know, taking the door panels off of these Porsches is no big deal if you know what you're doing. And man, look at the difference. You couldn't tell that this thing is wrapped right now. And with that, this car is essentially complete. So we're just gonna let things dry out a little bit, come back, wrap those edges down, trim out what we need, but all the film is on the car now. So what I like to do, maybe park it out in the sun for a couple hours, really let those small little bubbles evaporate, and just get a better look at it, you know? Our shop is somewhat bright, but out in the sun, you're gonna find all those little details you might have missed. That way, we can hand it into the customer perfect. This has been the GT4RS in UPPF Phantom Red.